Yo, what's going on, YouTube, and welcome back to Goal Line Hockey. It's your boy Kevin Forte, guys, and we're looking today as we wrap up our preseason rankings, going through each division. We've gone through the Pacific Division, we've gone through the Metropolitan Division, we've gone through the Atlantic, and now today we're going to go through, in the Western Conference, the Central Division. A very contested division. A lot of people may not agree with a lot of this division. I think there is a lot of questions about this division. Most of them are pretty, not that they're necessarily set in stone, because you never truly know. The parity in today's NHL, but you're seeing a little bit of a shift in teams that are here as well, and we're going to go over all that in this video. So, first things first, guys, we have a change in the Central Division for the first time ever. The Arizona Coyotes are moving from the Pacific Division out west to the Central Division. Now, again, a lot of people will bring up, that means Houston's coming in, that means Houston's coming in, that means Houston's coming in. We'll see. Will we get a second team in Texas? It may very well happen, but as of right now, they're in Arizona, and to be completely honest, they aren't much of a threat in this division. So it doesn't mean that much right now. In another 3-4 years from now, maybe so, but as of right now, yeah. So what we're going to do, we're going to go from 8 to 1. We're going to go through the teams, why I have them in that spot, how many points they will have, my projected points for the end of the season, as well as who makes the playoffs and who doesn't in this division. So, without further ado, number 8 in the Central Division is the newest addition to the Central Division. And it's the Arizona Coyotes. The Coyotes are going to finish bottom 5 in the NHL standings. I think this is going to be a really tough year for the Arizona Coyotes. There is a clear gap at the bottom here, and we'll get to that. But the Arizona Coyotes, just not a great team. Let go of a lot of guys. They're rebuilding this team. They're acquiring new guys, new draft picks, new prospects. That's the name of the game in Arizona right now. Not sure how well it's going to work out. They kind of are trying to remove everything from the John Chayka era there in AZ. And I think they're going to finish with 77 points, bottom 5 in the NHL, probably worst in the NHL, maybe other than Buffalo. They'll be in the Shane Wright sweepstakes at the end of the year, 8th in this division, and obviously missing the playoffs. I don't think there's much conversation there. So at number 7, it's not very different of a story. It may be different in a sense, and that is the Nashville Predators at number 7. Now, the Nashville Predators are here for a pretty different reason. They didn't go this summer and sell off all their guys and retain salary to bring in draft picks like the Coyotes did. They're just bad. They're just a bad team. And I hate to say that. I enjoyed Nashville when they went on that run. What was it, 2016, 2017, where they lost to Pittsburgh. That was exciting. The catfish on the ice and everything like that. It was great. But the problem is they overpaid guys that they shouldn't have paid. And it's starting to become a problem now because now they have to keep guys like Forsberg and Ekholm. It's going to be harder to re-sign those guys when you have these monster contracts to Matt Duchene. They've bought out Kyle Turris. But they have Ryan Johansson still there. They just have some duds of contracts. And the guys that they've brought in, maybe like Dante Fabro or Eeli Tolvanen, haven't developed necessarily the way the Predators had hoped. I think they're going to start to see the results of that this season. And David Poile is going to have to make some tough decisions here in 2022. And that's why I have the Nashville Predators with 78 points. Again, bottom 10 team in the NHL and missing the playoffs. 78 points, 7th in this division. That's it for Nashville. So, might be closing the book on an era there. At number 6, this is where things get interesting. I really honestly believe between 3 and 6, there's 4 teams here that you could argue, without a doubt, one of these teams could be, the third best team could be 6th, and the 6th best team here could be 3rd. And that's how weird this division gets. And that's why, number 6, we're taking a look at the St. Louis Blues, and the Blues right now, I don't know where to start because there's a lot of promise with this team. You look at some of the guys that they do have on this team. You have Justin Falk, Colton Parayko re-signed. You have guys like Torrey Krug, right? You have a really good blue line there, but they didn't play like it last season. And your goaltending, you got Jordan Binnington, who really had a rough season. Ville Husso as the backup was I don't even want to talk about. He was god-awful last year. I really hope he could pick things up. And they didn't really address anything there in either of those spots. They're up front. They still got really good players. You got Braden Schwartz, Ryan O'Reilly. But you've had some interesting departures. Guys like Schwartz and Hoffman leaving. Some questions about Tarasenko. He seems to be quite optimistic and ready to go this season, which is exciting for the Blues. But again, there is that little bit of a distraction off the ice, which could be a problem. But we'll see what happens. I think the Blues, again, there's too much uncertainty with the goaltending, and I think goaltending is king in today's NHL. And you look at the other teams in front of them, I just think their goaltending is just, even if it's slightly better, is better than the St. Louis Blues. Again, they could prove me wrong there, and that ends up being the difference between them being 6th and 3rd in this division. But they're going to finish with 89 points and missing the playoffs here this season. But again, you see the huge jump between 6 and 7. Nashville with 78 points and St. Louis with 89. Almost more than a 10-point gap, a 12-point gap between those two teams. That just shows you how much of a difference there is between the top two, the rest of that division and those bottom two teams. So now at number 5, we have the Dallas Stars at number 5. And the Dallas Stars, they look like they're going to be a better team, right? I mean, Tyler Seguin should be back. Great news there. Jamie Benn and Alexander Radulov showed some glimpses of success at the end of last season. Great. They added a goaltender to replace Ben Bishop, at least for this season, in Braden Holtby. But again, Braden Holtby didn't have a great season. The last 2 seasons, his last season in Washington, his first in Vancouver, didn't really work out. Anton Khudobin didn't have a great season here in 2021. Obviously, we know he did in the Magic in the playoff bubble in 2020, sending them to the Stanley Cup final against Tampa, losing in 6. But there's some uncertainty between Khudobin and Holtby, and that's part of the reason why they're at number 5 here. I think, like the Blues, it's better goaltending than the Blues, but I just don't. I'm not sold on it, and I'm not sold completely on some of their depth up front. This has been a problem for this team where they don't get enough depth scoring, and that has been a problem, and I think it could be a problem again for the Stars. But with that said, I think the Dallas Stars have a respectable season, 91 points. Up until that last week of the season, I think they'll be fighting for a playoff spot, but unfortunately 5th in this division with only 91 points. And you're looking at the Pacific Division as well as the rest of this division, the Dallas Stars will miss the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs. I just think there's still too much uncertainty with depth. How good is Ryan Suter going to be? I think they've got some other really good defensemen there. Klingberg on a contract expiration date next summer. Miro Heiskanen, he's going to play well this year. Esa Lundell. That looks like a pretty good top 4. But there is some questions about Suter as well. 91 points and out of the playoffs for the Stars. So disappointing, but we'll see how it goes. Listen, this could be totally wrong. We'll see what happens. At number 4, we have the Minnesota Wild here at number 4. I have them getting 95 points in the Central Division. This is a big year for the Minnesota Wild. You sign Kirill Kaprizov to a nice little extension, a 5-year deal. You also bring back Kevin Fiala for a 1-year extension. You're expecting big things from Fiala, kind of that prove-it-wrong mentality to the management there in Minnesota. They've got some really talented players. They locked up Joel Eriksson-Ek. We might see some of the young guys like Marco Rossi and Matthew Boldy up front. So there's a lot of optimism in Minnesota this year. But with that said, will their goaltending be as good as it was last year? Again, there's another team, the goaltending situation. They had really, really good goaltending last season between Veini Vehviläinen and what's his name? I completely forgot. Not good, guys. Cam Talbot. Thank you. Cam Talbot. So, are they going to have that same success? Because it was like really good goaltending last year. They're going to need like something similar to that this year, and I think they can do it. We've seen Cam Talbot put together good seasons. His first season at Edmonton, the end of his tenure there with the New York Rangers, he's had successful seasons. The question is, can he do it again and again and again? And we'll see that this year with the Wild. I think the Wild have really decided they're going to build up this year. They still might make another trade if they go for a guy like Tomas Hertl or maybe another center out west. They could still do that. That is definitely an option for the Wild, and that may separate them between maybe 1 or 2 other teams here ahead of them. And yes, with 95 points, the Wild do make the 2022 Stanley Cup playoffs. Yes, the state of hockey, you will have playoffs next year. All right, so at number 3, these teams clinched the playoffs based off of their divisional final standings, which is good. At number 3 is the Chicago Blackhawks. That's why I wear their jersey today. I think this is a pick-me-up year for the Blackhawks. There's a lot of questions about this team going into this year. You lost Duncan Keith. You've made some interesting moves, but is it enough for this team to be a playoff team? They were really bad the last 2 years. So are they going to be able to improve that much to make the playoffs? And I truly believe they will. You look at last season, they started the season without their top 2 centers in Kirby Dach, who got hurt in World Juniors, and they also started the season without Jonathan Toews, who had some serious medical issues last year. And they didn't have goaltending. They had no goaltending. And now they bring in the 2021 Vezina winner in Marc-Andre Fleury. You have both those centers back. You've got a team here that is going to be a wrecking ball. Oh, yeah. They also brought in the Jones brothers, Caleb and Seth Jones, from Edmonton and Columbus. So this is a team here that looks completely different from what we saw last year. 2 internal additions from Dach and Toews, which I'm expecting them both to really turn it on this year. Dach may even be the number 1 center this year, in front of Toews. Seth Jones and Caleb Jones, huge additions to the back end. They also brought in a guy that nobody's really talking about. I like Connor Murphy, but I also like Jake McCabe, who Stan Bowman saw in the U.S., I think it was World Juniors back in I think it was 2010, 2011, which long time to be looking at scouting reports, but still, that was obviously, he left an impression on Bowman. And again, Marc-Andre Fleury coming in, a team that really last year, I remember criticizing having the worst goalie tandem in the league. That is not the case this year. Huge improvement. Marc-Andre Fleury looks ready to go. He's motivated. I think this is a really good season for the Blackhawks. They're going to finish with 96 points, just ahead of the Minnesota Wild in that division. But yes, 96 points, 3rd in the Central Division. Your Chicago Blackhawks are coming back this season. So that means at the top, we've got 2 teams. I think there is a gap between these top 2 teams and the 3 through 6 teams. And the reason I say that is I really like what the Winnipeg Jets have. I like the segue. I really like what the Winnipeg Jets have, and that's why they're at number 2 here. I think the Winnipeg Jets goaltending is just really solid. Yes, they did lose Laurent Brossoit, and they're bringing back Eric Comrie. He's really going to need a resurgence. That could get interesting during the season. Don't be surprised if they take a goalie from waivers this year. But Connor Hellebuyck, a Vezina finalist candidate, in my opinion. He's always going to be in that conversation. I'm a fanboy of Hellebuyck. He is just so good and so consistently good, and that's just enough for the Jets to have an opportunity. Their defense got a couple of huge upgrades with Nate Schmidt, Brendan Dillon coming in. I really like those ads. And there are a couple losses to this team up front. They did lose Mason Appleton to the Seattle Kraken. Matthew Perreault ends up going a little bit west or a little bit east of Winnipeg to Montreal, to his home city. So those are a couple key departures depth-wise, but we've seen Jansen Harkins. He looks like a solid player. He's going to continue to fill that role. Stastny might become a third-line center if we'll see Pierre-Luc Dubois, who I'm expecting he's got number 90 now, expecting him to have a great season for the Jets. I'm really rooting for Dubois. He had such a rough season last year, expecting good things there. I think the Winnipeg Jets, not only do they finish 2nd in this division, but they finish with 5 more points than the 3rd-place Chicago Blackhawks, getting the home ice advantage with 101 points, getting the big 3 digits there. 101 for the Jets, 2nd in the division, and probably a top 10 team in the NHL. I think some of the weaker teams in this division, the Winnipeg Jets will absolutely feast on teams like the Nashville Predators and the Arizona Coyotes. I think it's going to be enough for them to get over that 100-point mark. So that means at number 1, you guys know I am a big fan of Joe Sakic's teams, and that's no different here in the 2021-2022 NHL season, and that is the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Colorado Avalanche were another team that had a couple of losses to their team. I mean, Philip Grubauer, your starting goaltender, he heads to the expansion Kraken. You have a couple of maybes. A guy like Eric Johnson, will he be in the lineup next year? He's had a couple of injuries. He's had a tough injury history. That could be something there. You also have the situation with Brian Graves, now traded to the New Jersey Devils. So a couple of losses on the blue line. Kyle Burrows, he ends up leaving to go to Vancouver. And then up front, I think losing Brandon Saad was a pretty big loss for the Avs. And yes, you were able to keep Gabe Landeskog, so it definitely lessens the blow. You also, just to add to it, you lost Jonas Donskoy. So we're going to see more of the young guys here in Colorado. I think this is a huge season for guys like Bowen Byram to continue to improve his game. Tyson Yost, I think that's how you say it, Yost. Tyson Yost, expecting him to have a really good season. I remember seeing him at the Garden at MSG with North Dakota. He was a really good player then. He had a lot of confidence and swagger. He needs to get some of that back. I think he could do that this year. And Nazem Kadri, man, he really needs to step up. Really an interesting scare at the end of his season. There were some questions that maybe he could get traded out again because of his situations and antics in the playoffs. He really needs to prove that he is worth being there in Colorado. Well, there's going to be some problems. And again, as they start to bring in some of their young guys, some young centers that are going to start to fill those spots like Alex Newhook and Tyson Yost, he may find himself lower in the depth chart and maybe not even playing in Colorado anymore. So with that said, they did add some guys. And like I said, I think another year of Byram on the back end is an addition. You also bring in Darcy Kemper. Yes, it did come at a high price tag. Also losing Connor Timmins on the blue line. But you bring in Darcy Kemper, who I think is a very reliable player. And again, Pavel Francouz, you don't want that as your starter. So it's worth bringing in Darcy Kemper. The final year of his deal. There is some slight jeopardy here playing the lottery ball for Joe Sakic. But I think it will pay off for the Avs. With that said, quick Gatorade break. With that said, the Colorado Avalanche, yes, they win the division. They make the playoffs. They're going to finish with 108 points this season. Now, if you look at my other 3 videos where I had my preseason rankings and where those teams would finish in points, 108 points means your Colorado Avalanche win the 2022 President's Trophy, which some Avs fans may be saying, do not give us that award. That is the curse of death, the kiss of death, winning that trophy. But the Avalanche will win it with 108 points in 2022. So, with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. I really like this division. I think there's going to be a lot of parity. Other than the bottom 2 teams, I think this division is going to be very competitive. Really, St. Louis, Dallas, Minnesota, and Chicago are 4 teams in particular that I'm really interested to see how they do this year, because I think what we saw this summer from those 4 teams, respectively, they had down seasons last year. Well, maybe not Minnesota, but Chicago, Dallas, and St. Louis had down years last year. What have they done? Did they do enough to improve to get back to the playoffs? And let me know who you think wins this division as well. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL and more videos just like this one, guys, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and an even bigger subscribe down below. And guys, as always, thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you again during the regular season.